Hey guys, it's Bradley with the Insurance Guys podcast. You know, over the past year that we've been recording this podcast, Scott and I have met some amazing individuals and received some amazing advice. So we decided to do something for our audience that may or may not be able to listen to every single episode. We put together a white paper / ebook of the top 7 things that you must do in your agency in 2018 and 2019. We're giving this to you guys free as of right now. You can text the word book, BOOK, to 251-418-4724. Follow the prompts and you will promptly receive that book. Or you can email me at bradley@saralandinsurance.com. That's not going to be automated like the text, but you can receive it that way as well.
Insurance agents from around the world, welcome to the Insurance Guys podcast, hosted by yours truly, Scott Howell, and the incomparable Bradley Flowers. For agents, by agents, we're here to share real-life experiences, tips, and insights related to all aspects of both being an insurance agent and running a successful agency. So sit back, turn up the volume, and let's get down to business. Insurance agents from around the world, welcome to the Insurance Guys podcast. I am your fearless host and leader, Mr. Scott Howell with I Protect Insurance and Financial Services, based out of Huntsville, Alabama. Before we get started on today's podcast, please help me welcome. He is a 6'3" sophomore from Saraland, Alabama, first team parade All-American, Rivals 5-star recruit, and he is single-handedly bringing the kindness revolution to the Mobile metropolitan area. Please put your hands together and welcome the incomparable Mr. Bradley Flowers. How are you, Bradley?
I'm great, Scott. How are you?
Man, I am doing fan-super-tabulous.
Not as energetic as you are right now.
I feel relaxed. I feel giddy. I feel humbled. I'm in a
we
good
have
mood
in-studio
today.
guests, Scott is the phoenix rising out of the ashes.
I am literally the phoenix rising from the ashes. I love having in-studio guests, and I have a fantabulous in-studio guest with us today. Before I get to her, though, let's talk a little bit about our mission on this podcast. Our mission on this podcast is to help you agents in any way we can. Sales, marketing, hiring, firing, commissions, we need to do a podcast on commission structure.
That's a good one, yeah.
I just thought of that. I just pulled a Mike. I just pulled a Mike Stromso on you. I just went right instead of left.
I might know the guy too.
Okay. Well, I think most agents will say if y'all can figure that out, we will all listen to that podcast. We're here to help in any way we can. One of the big ways that I want to help, because it's something that I say every single episode, is I want to talk about networking. We're going to talk a little bit about payroll today. We're going to talk about networking today. And we have the person in studio to do it. She was born and raised in Mobile, Alabama, a graduate of the University of South Alabama. She is the owner of Payroll Vault here in Mobile. She is the co-host of her own podcast entitled Cheers to Business Podcast.
Recorded right here at Deep Fried Studios.
Recorded here, and you can listen to it on SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes, and anywhere else that you may want to download a podcast. She enjoys fishing with her husband. What? We'll get back to that. And she has 2 beautiful children, Maya and Cooper, and her husband's hot. I saw him on Facebook. She has a hot husband.
He actually did say that before you got here.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the other incomparable Miss Cadie Gaut.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited.
Are you ready to run through a wall?
I'm ready.
Thank you for being here. I have a Mobile story to tell you both. I always have stories. My latest story. Last night, I went to dinner with Bradley Flowers, who some of you know on this podcast.
He is
the co-host of this podcast, and his beautiful wife, Laurel. And Laurel was really warming up to me. I can tell. I think for about a year, she was a little skeptical.
You're a lot of personality.
Who is this guy? Who is this guy? Who is this guy? But I think she's really warming up to me. So we get through eating. We were eating at El Papi and drinking ashtray beers.
Mexican
ashtrays. That's for another episode to tell everybody what that is. And I get in my truck to go back to the hotel. Well, I get out, and my favorite valet at the hotel is there. I get out of my truck, and I'm about to go inside, and he's about to get in my truck, and he goes, "Hey, Mr. Howell. And I said, "Yeah, what's your name, bud?" He said, if you'll go back here behind these buildings, and he points kind of south towards me, and he says, if you go back here behind these buildings, there's a park back there, and they're having a concert tonight. And I think if you went back there, you could probably pick up a woman and bring her back over here. And instantly in my mind, two things go through my mind. First of all, does this guy actually thinks that I'm good enough looking that I could go walk through a dark park and pick up some woman and bring her back to my hotel? That's the first thing I thought of. The second thing I thought of is how desperately lonely I must look for a valet to tell me that I need to go to a dark park and pick up women.
And you're not single.
Well, exactly, and that's why I told him. I said, I'm going to take a hard no on that tonight. But I really appreciate you offering, no question. That's my Mobile story from last night. I always have Mobile stories when I come down here. So today, guys, we're going to talk a little bit about payroll. We're going to talk about networking. I will tell everybody listening to this podcast, I had about a $75 million agent tell me one time. He looked at me and he said, Scott, the one way you will ever get fired from selling insurance is if you ever get caught stealing the money. If you ever get caught stealing the money, you are done. And I've always remembered that. And I know that fraud happens and agents start rationalizing and justifying what they're doing, and some of that stuff happens and people do get fired, especially captive agents.
Or at least get into a tax situation with the IRS.
Exactly. Like that. Exactly. But today I want to talk a little bit about payroll with Miss Cadie, and I also want to talk about networking, because my understanding is from talking to many, many people down here is you are the networking queen down here.
I try.
And at every end of every podcast, you know what I tell people at the end of every podcast, including today's episode, I say, get your ass out from behind that desk and go out into the big bad world and go sell insurance. And for those of you that don't know what I mean by that, what I mean by that is you need to get out amongst the people, you need to sling business cards, and you need to go to all these networking events. And apparently you are one of those people that knows how to do that. So let's talk a little bit about that. When did you really start feeling like, hey, this is something that I need to do in terms of getting out and getting involved in the Mobile community and doing a lot of networking?
I mean, it's definitely something that I never thought I could do. I was that nerd happy behind the computer, not out talking to people.
Are you antisocial?
I have social anxiety, and I'm an introvert. So, and people confuse that with being shy, whereas introverts can get out and be social. However, they are so drained afterwards, and you're constantly worrying when you're in that settings. But again, just like life, it's something you just deal with.
Right.
And the more you do it, the easier it gets, and you learn tips and tricks, and there's plenty of people out there willing to help you get there.
Yeah. So how did you ever come up with the bravery, the courage to just get out and start doing it?
Because I didn't want the company to go bankrupt, basically. Right. You know, when we first started the company, my mom and I, Karen Simmons, company Payroll Vault.
Shout out to Mom, by the way.
Absolutely. And we had a salesperson at the time who was going out and about. Well, that ended. And so it was just me. And it was either this thing is going to grow or nothing is going to happen. So it really was, I had no choice. I just had to do it. And so my very first outing was a chamber meeting down in Bayou Battery. And I was, of all places, and I was so nervous. And those were some of the nicest people. There was no reason to be nervous. And that's really kind of how it got kicked off. And from there, I just started to go to everything, because every event has its own kind of feel and vibe.
And you have to go to everything to find out what you don't want to go to.
Exactly. I mean, not only the setting, but the people, the cost, you know, the time. Whenever I hear someone say, I didn't know about that event, that's an excuse. They're all over Facebook. There's meetup.com, you know, friends calendars, there's newsletters, the Mobile Rundown. There's plenty of opportunities to find those resources.
Yeah. So as we sit here today on the 20th of September, how many events a week are you going to?
On a slow week, probably 2. So definitely I try to do 1 a week. Now, I do get burnt out. I'll be completely honest. And that's the introvert in me, is I'll go out and I'm just, you know, going to every single thing that I can. And then my energy just crashes and I hit a brick wall. But it's okay as long as you know that about yourself. And if I can feel it coming, and not only my energy level, but back in the office, there may be things, you know, I'm out and about, clients are being added, and then you can kind of feel the office getting shaky. So that's when you step back in, kind of iron out some things. And I mean, that's just part of our business, at least.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So when you go to these events, Sounds like you do about 2 energy level drops. You start telling yourself, I don't have to go. And you skip maybe 1 or 2, and then you get back on it.
Exactly.
Go 2 or 3 more. Right?
Yeah.
One problem that I've run into here recently, because I don't do as much as she does, but I do quite a bit, is having events on the same day.
Yeah.
But I was talking to a new real estate agent the other day that was asking advice, just how to get started, hadn't sold a house yet. And she's like, I don't want to do cold calling before you say cold calling. And I said, okay, so that's not a problem. I said, you need to turn into the networking machine.
Yes.
And you need to go to everything, and you need to taste a little bit of everything, because you never know what you'll like and what you won't like, what you'll, pick up clients at and what you won't, because sometimes it's the opposite of what you think.
Absolutely.
And one thing I've found that a lot of times the smaller Chamber of Commerce events, there's a lot more to take advantage of, because you're the only person in that sector there, maybe.
Exactly. And a lot of the, I guess, people in the decision makers, so to say, they are at those chambers, whereas some of the bigger chambers, it may be just representatives, which there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's a misconception about networking. It's not just to make a sale. When I started going to these events, I was just passing out my business cards without even saying a word. And, the invitation wasn't there.
Yeah.
And so that's throughout time, I realized I'm not here to make a sell, me personally. I'm there to form a genuine relationship with people and that sell will come. And it does, but it's a slower sell, but that's our industry. It isn't.
And you're going to run into those people that are like, here, so much.
Exactly.
Like you're gonna run into those people,
and it makes me really uncomfortable if I meet someone for the very first time, and I'll use the paper industry. And
Michael Scott,
and hey, I'm Cadie. Hey, I'm Michael. Where do you get your paper from?
Advanced Refrigeration.
And I'm like, whoa, it's courting almost. Like, we need to have a friendly conversation, be genuinely interested, because and part of that may be with being in the South, but people do business with people that they like and trust. And so I want to just form that relationship
What
first.
I like to do is get into their personal space and then just give them the stink eye and ask them who they have their insurance with.
Okay, put that aside. So, one thing...
That was a joke, by the way.
Well, it's... And I told an agent the other day, I said, if somebody sits down at your desk, you don't look at them and say, okay, what you going to buy today?
Right.
You have a conversation with them. So that it's a lot of times it's just getting to know people, and two... And you can maybe, agree with this or disagree with this, but you start seeing the same people at some of these events. And like, for example, I know that if I show up at an event and she's there, it's the right event to be at. And I know if I show up at an event and somebody else is there, I know, okay, I don't have to go to this every time they have it.
And just like, I compare it to kind of birthday parties. And I'm not saying you act differently, but each networking event has a different vibe. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to act how I would act at one of my friends' birthday parties like I would act at one of my kids' birthday party. And it's just an openness. For example, if you're going to a daytime luncheon event compared to an after hours event, like I love the after hours because it's just more relaxed. Mm-hmm. There's usually wine, truth be told. And it's just... You've got to get out there to figure out what you like, or else you'll never know. And I always hate when I hear, I hate networking or I can't network. And I'm just, have you ever talked to someone in the grocery line? Yeah. Have you ever been waiting for something and, You
never talked to anybody?
You've never talked to a stranger, because that's what networking is. Mm-hmm. It's purely just opening up and sharing information with people. And if you don't know how to start that conversation, just ask them a question. Where are you from? What do you do? What's your favorite thing about your job? How did you get in this position? If that's all that you have to do. Oh, there was one time I walked to an event, and one of the reasons I hate being late in the event is because everybody already kind of groups up, and that's really intimidating for me. But find someone who's alone. And one time I walked up to her and I said, hey, I don't know anyone here, and I see you're alone. Can I stand by you? And then the conversation just got started. Exactly. Don't be afraid to be. If you're an awkward person, embrace it. People like it.
That's how I got my wife's number.
Seriously? No. So for the 250,000 insurance agents that are listening and watching this right now, two Scott Howell rules I'll tell you. Number one, if people don't know you, they damn sure aren't going to do business with you.
They don't know you, they can't flow you.
That's right. Number two, when you go to these networking events and you meet people, don't go hang out with people you know for very long. You know, you need to get around and you need to meet people that you don't know. And that's the hard part. How many of us go to networking events, see the 3 or 4 people we know, spend an hour talking to them, we leave, we haven't met anybody new, we haven't talked to anybody else. That's like rule number 2. Don't do that. And number 3, when you do go to a networking event and you meet somebody new and you get in the boat with them, go back to the first Colby Jubenville podcast that we did. I don't know.
You love that phrase, don't you?
Get in the boat with them, learn about what they're about. You know, ask them, what are you about? Tell me about you. Get in the boat with them. And once you get in the boat with them and you learn about them and you talk and you feel that connection with them, send them some business first.
Absolutely.
You think you want to get some business out of somebody? It is the Scott Howell law of reciprocity, folks. The law of reciprocity. The first thing you got to do is send them some business, and I just about guarantee you they'll send you some. So that's all I have to say about that, as Forrest Gump once said.
It's got to be a win-win.
Absolutely.
You done?
So,
I'm kidding.
So, you know, the networking events, I do a very poor job of them. I've been in a transition period in my life, and I don't do as much networking. I haven't done as much networking this year as I did last year. I went to a lot of stuff up in Huntsville. And I know that a lot of guys listening to this and girls listening to this may be in a town of 4,000 or 5,000 people like the place where I grew up. But you can still hit a ton of networking events, especially in small towns. You've got Kiwanis clubs and
Rotary, Lions Club.
And host your own.
Yeah, host your
That's
own.
a great
Host your own event. You know, I've been fortunate enough to do a few events that have worked out. And that's always a good way to get known. You know, one thing that happened to us is the chamber where my office is based out of a few years ago was struggling to get businesses to host after hours events. And I said, okay, I'll do one, but I want to do it at a restaurant. And for me, like, not everybody wants to come to an insurance office, right? Most people don't, actually. Right. I don't want to go sometimes. And so I didn't want people coming to my office, and I knew they didn't want to come to my office, so I held it at a restaurant. And the attendance at events at a restaurant is always a little bit higher because people kind of know what to expect. They know there's going to be food. They can get a drink if they want to get a drink and that sort of thing. So that's always kind of a little tidbit I tell people is, you know, you can host an event. It doesn't have to be at your place.
Right.
It's like the one I went to last night. I mean, it was at Starta Brewing. And so, I mean, you have people at beer and they had bingo. And that was so fun to have an activity just because, let's just say the event isn't where you want it to be. Those people are still they're still sticking around.
Mm-hmm. How many people were there last night?
So it's a newer group. Someone started it. Kudos to them.
Brooks,
and
right?
Yeah, Brooks. Yeah. And last week they had 14, and then this was their second event, and there was about 12 people. But it was a great event.
Did you meet anybody new?
I did. A few people, 3 people.
You know, the thing that interests me about what you do is it's a little bit like our business in the fact that, you know, a lot of companies, a lot of smaller businesses need payroll service.
They do.
So it's like every other person you see could really use your service.
And that's the thing. You're in a B2C or B2B. So literally every networking event, it's all of your clients standing around, potential clients, you know.
Exactly. Well, and it's great when current clients are there just to kind of, you know, like, hey, I'd love to talk to so-and-so. Can you tell them how much you love me?
I was going to say it's an in-person referral. I mean, in-person, you know, customer review for you.
Right. It's fantastic.
Let me ask you a question. Something that I've always wanted to ask you, and I think would really offer a lot of insight to the audience, is you have 2 kids.
I do.
You have a husband. You have a business you run. You have a mom runs a business.
Yes.
Right next door to you, right? How do you, number one, find out what events are the priority ones, but also how do you manage all that? And because obviously you've got to
line up
those kids, and it's almost like you never miss anything. How do you work all that out?
Calendar. Yeah. You schedule your time, you make what you want a priority, and if it's scheduled, you treat your schedule just like you would a meeting with a potential client.
Right.
And as long as you make it a priority and plan ahead, I mean, that's the biggest thing. Sunday night, I'm on Facebook events looking to see what's going on, who's going, you know, looking. That's the great thing about Facebook. I mean, you mentioned stalking people on Facebook. You can look and see who's going, find out about them, and then that makes it that much easier to have those conversations.
Yeah. And something interesting. Johnny Gwynn and I, they're going to have to edit a bunch of stuff out of this. Johnny Gwynn and I were talking about yesterday. So Brian Appleton, who we had on last episode, hosts the Insurance Agent Summit, which is an online conference, and he doesn't release any information on that. They have 10,000 people that sign up, but he doesn't release any of the information till the week before. It's kind of like a strike while the iron's hot. And Johnny and I were talking about, hosting a networking event, and you don't want to release that event too early because everybody gets interested 2 months in advance. And
then the day comes.
And they forget about it, and you really don't know how to gauge who's going to be there and who's not going to be there. So it's kind of an interesting thing,
Let's talk about payroll services.
Payroll.
So I have a bookkeeper, does QuickBooks for me.
Yep.
Keeps up with all the stuff that we spend money on. And she does, and right now she does our payroll services as well.
Yes.
She mails off the quarterly tax returns and does all of that for me. I have worked for a State Farm agency where we had a payroll service.
Yes.
And it worked well too. I mean, there's a few little, flub ups here and there, but overall it worked really well. But let's talk to the insurance agents out there a little bit about payroll service and why it would be important or advantageous for them to utilize payroll service in their business rather than trying to do it themselves.
Yeah. So, doing it yourself, it usually starts off that way when you have 1 or 2 employees. Those are the people that I say need us the most. When I hear I'm too small, I say, no, because most likely you're doing payroll. So in the time it takes you to do payroll, even if it's 30 minutes, how many clients could you have called?
Correct.
And it's just a value of what else could you be doing. So, for example, QuickBooks, I'm starting to work with a lot of bookkeepers who are doing payroll for their clients because payroll has really kind of turned into its own beast with the Department of Labor, Department of Revenue, all the different due dates. That's where we step in. So QuickBooks is fantastic. I use it for my own business. However, for payroll, there's the lack of support. Whereas with us, you call, someone answers, we're there to help, and it's that individual, service. And QuickBooks, there's a payroll subscription fee. And then if you're using desktop and you're using payroll, you have to update your QuickBooks every 2 years to host the payroll. And then not only that, you're having to pay someone to do the quarterly payroll tax returns.
Right.
So and your time. So if you add up all of that, it would be more cost beneficial to use a payroll service.
I agree with that. And I've always used a bookkeeper to handle that for me. One reason that I would love to use a payroll service if I didn't have one would be that if something does get screwed up, I want to be able to point the finger at somebody else and say, listen, I know these didn't get paid. This didn't get paid. It's not my fault. It's their fault. They're the ones that screwed it up.
Absolutely.
And I know that's a little bit selfish to act that way, but if you're doing it yourself, there is no body behind you to say, look, I'm sorry your pay got screwed up.
Exactly.
I did it.
Well, and it's so much more than just the actual processing of the payroll.
Right.
There's the other things as far as timekeeping. If people are doing paper timesheets, 8 minutes across 10 employees for 52 weeks of the year, that's a lot of money if you do the math.
Right.
And, not just their pay, but the taxes on top of that. And so that's why we try to implement, the electronic timekeeping with GPS and background checks and drug screening. There's all that extra stuff.
So stop right there and talk a little bit about that. So what other items are you offering to small companies that want to do payroll?
So the HR, human resource assistance, whether it be handbooks and the new hire forms that you have to have, the new hire reporting, E-Verify, job costing, that's great for construction industries, and the electronic timekeeping, where you can do it on your phone. So we have the physical clocks, or employees can clock in and out on their phones, and it has GPS. So that's great for people who aren't in the office. And let's see, drug testing, background checks, all of those, really, if it's anything employee related.
So for the average small business that has, let's say, 3 to 5 employees, I think a lot of insurance agents that listen to this would probably fit into that mold.
Absolutely.
What are we looking at in terms of and you don't have to tell me exactly what you charge, but just an average of what they would be looking at as far as payroll service?
Our average client, so really I say 1 to 50 employees. We have 2 clients that are 500 employees each, so that's on our larger side, but really 1 to 25. Our average client is about $1,500 a year.
A year.
A year.
So to me, that's just
Yes.
I mean,
And
you can't not do that.
The two most common things I hear is, I can't believe how affordable it is, and I wish I switched sooner.
Right. Yeah.
Well, you do business nationwide, right?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. Luckily, the internet is a fabulous thing. So email them the paperwork to get started. Any employee documents, I assist in the transition if they're switching payroll companies. So as long as they tell their current payroll company, hey, it's okay to talk to her, I get everything they need so the client, sees no difference. That's our goal, is to make it as seamless as possible.
Mm-hmm. So if anybody wanted to get in touch with you on this podcast and talk a little bit more about you handling their payroll service, how would they get in touch with you?
PayrollVault.com.
Easiest way, isn't it?
Easiest way.
Yeah.
We are a franchise, so just be sure when you're picking a location to do Alabama.
Even if you're in Nebraska.
Because
I see. Like if they're in Nebraska
and they pick Nebraska, it's going to go to that territory.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well,
which I love my Payroll Vault family.
Sure. I understand.
So much, but
yeah,
I also really like
taking food out of your money, taking money out of your pocket if they go to the one in Nebraska. I get that. Well, I just I think payroll, and I want to get some podcasts together in the future and talk more about accounting. I think that most agencies use a lot of them use QuickBooks. A lot of them use agency management systems that they have in place that include an accounting function.
Absolutely.
So there are different ways to do that, and a lot of that's just based on size of the agency, I think, more than anything else.
I mean, I keep a QuickBooks for my own personal life.
Right.
I can't imagine not doing that.
You are such a nerd.
I am. When I tell you...
Nobody does that but you.
I can tell you to the penny how much I spent on coffee last month.
That's amazing. Hey, let me ask you another question. Could you take bank statements from an individual and plug them into QuickBooks to get a financial picture of what all they're spending their money on?
Are you using QuickBooks Online? If that person was using QuickBooks Online, it will sync to the bank, and then you can also import CSV Excel files.
Well, it's not me.
Okay.
She was going like, well, you can do that yourself. No, it's somebody. It's a friend of mine, and they've been having some financial situations where it's like, where's your money going? And I was like, you know what you need to do? You need to find a good payroll bookkeeping person. Download 6 months of your expenditures off your bank statements, give it to them, and let them figure out where's your damn money going.
Yeah, that's when I would definitely recommend the importing feature into QuickBooks. So that's something else we can do. We can send you a file to import the payroll data into your QuickBooks so that you have those financials.
They don't have QuickBooks. This is just an individual. This is just an individual that, most people don't download their personal finances into QuickBooks every month.
No.
Which I love. I love that, by the way. That's great.
Yeah, but even if you just use, Excel, I'm an Excel nerd, but you could have different, just organize the transactions through that if you download them into an Excel file.
I love Excel, but I hate putting it together.
Oh, I love it. It's a deep, dark world, though.
You're almost acting like you can. You're telling me, yes, it can be done in a number of different formats.
Yes.
But
there's always more than one way to do something.
I got to figure out who would be willing to do it, though, because I don't want to.
So what? Paper files go into Excel?
Well, you could probably do it electronically, and you could probably download it into a
fiverr.com. Go to fiverr.com. Pay somebody to do that.
Wells Fargo has a function where if you'll go into each transaction and do a click down, drop down, you can pick where that transaction goes, like into the groceries and utility, that kind of stuff. And then at the end of that, it will give you kind of a breakdown of where your finances, where your money's going.
Yeah. Are they with Wells Fargo?
No.
Oh, well, scratch that.
Yeah. But that's a pretty cool function.
Yeah.
To do that.
Find a college student that you would have to trust them, seeing your whole, you can tell. So I used to do bookkeeping, and you can tell a lot about a person from their bank statement.
Oh, I bet.
Starbucks, bar.
Oh, that's about right. So bookkeeping wise, obviously you guys are doing the payroll function. Can you do the bookkeeping as well?
No, I have some great bookkeepers and accountants and CPAs. Yeah. And that's the big, so I started out, and my mom is a CPA, and I was doing payroll through her firm when I was working on my finance degree. And when she started outsourcing the payroll to me, her CPA firm grew by 12%.
Wow.
Because her account.
It's a big firm to begin with, right?
She has 12 people.
Yeah.
because her accountants aren't making 941 payments or processing payroll, which isn't really a billing item for a lot of CPAs. They just offer it because their clients need it. So they weren't stuck doing that. They were actually doing billable accounting work.
Right.
And so that's what I'm trying to.
So her firm does bookkeeping.
Yes,
they do.
They do the whole.
Another importance for insurance agencies. You know, I've heard stories of agents, not necessarily anybody we know, but that have gone 13 months without paying their payroll taxes.
So,
stuff like that.
And that's a big thing.
Missed.
Or
it's easy to miss.
The quarter comes and they don't have those taxes. So that's what we do on pay-as-you-go taxes, so tax impounding. So with each payroll, we go ahead and draft those payroll taxes and then pay it in on your behalf. So there's not those big quarterly payments.
Right.
And keeping up with the different due dates. So for example, Alabama withholding, if your total withholding tax is more than $1,000, it's due on the 15th of every month. But if it's less than that, then you can do it quarterly. And so keeping up with those different rules, especially if you have a growing business, watch out.
Payroll taxes are ridiculous.
And workers' comp.
Yeah. Guys, I'm going to tell you something. I'm not sure. If you've got a growing agency, you're growing in premium, growing in size, hiring more people, I don't think that there's any other function that's any more important than the accounting and bookkeeping function and payroll function in your agency.
And on top of that, outsourcing it so you can focus on things that grow your business.
Absolutely.
Stay in your circle.
Yep.
Because I will tell you this, of all the things related to my business, the thing that scares the shit out of me the most is just that whole accounting, payroll.
See, and mine is insurance.
Bookkeeping function. That scares me the most because you know, I've had this fear. It's almost like a fear of heights of like one day waking up and my bookkeeper calling me and going, "Hey, I just forgot to pay payroll taxes for 4 quarters."
Yeah.
Or me finding out through my bank statements that she's stealing money and now I have to prosecute her. And let me tell you something, guys. I sell a shitload of commercial insurance. If you don't think a bookkeeper will get access to your money and steal money from you, all I can say is you have lost your mind. I hear story after story after story after story of, yeah, we had a lady doing the books and we'll come to find out she'd stole
doing them all right.
$75,000 over 2 years, and we can't find the money, and she doesn't have it anymore, so we're not going to prosecute her. I mean, I've probably heard that story 10 times, no doubt. I promise you.
Terrifying.
It is.
We had a client come from a bigger payroll company, and they did not file or pay their state payroll taxes for over a year. They had no idea.
Did bankrupt them?
No.
God, can you imagine?
Payroll Vault stay
But
today.
that's where exactly come in.
Yeah, but it's still got to get paid.
They had no idea, and that's the thing. So that was, my first thing working with them. Okay, first step is to actually get the tax paid in, and then that's when I step in, communicate with the state. Hey, here's what happened. Request the penalty abatements, and that's what we do.
I'll tell you this happened to me. This is a true story. One of millions of Scott Howell stories that I have for you people.
We need a sound effect. It's like, true story.
True story. So in 2004, I was working for a company. Made $75,000 that year on my W-2, right? So a couple years later, they send me that Social Security thing that shows you what you've made and how much. You know what I'm talking about? What am I talking about? The form,
benefits thing?
Yeah. The thing that shows you like how much money you're accruing for your Social Security when you retire. You know what I'm talking about?
That must only be something old people get because I don't think Cadie and I have gotten that yet.
Well, you only get one of those about every 2 or 3 years. But anyway, I got this form. And I look at it, and they're supposed to be paying that part of it to go towards that. And on that form, they had me making like $4,000 that year.
Oh.
And to be honest with you, and it's on me, it's almost like become this bucket list thing. I know I need to take care of that because I can go back. I think I still have my taxes from 2004 and clearly show them that, hey, look. I made $75,000, and they only reported me making $4,000 that year. So
I would first ask about the tax.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing. Is at the end of the day, that tax is on you.
But I paid the tax on $75,000.
The Social Security tax was withheld from your check.
Ooh,
yes.
Maybe I owe.
But was it paid in?
Older Scott is not going to like younger Scott.
Abort. Never mind. Just kidding, guys. That really didn't happen.
That was about a friend.
We're about to get that text from the FBI that says stay right where you are.
It won't be the FBI.
No, it was so crazy. So when I very first started, I'm a reporting agent. So to get that, I had to go to the police station and get fingerprinted. Well, about a week after that happened, some chick came into the office wanting a check stub. And I was like, okay,
I've heard this story,
do you work for who do you work for? And she was like, no, I just need a check stub. She said, you guys create check stubs. And I'm just, keep in mind, this is almost 4 years ago. So
a check stub?
A check stub.
She wanted a loan or something, right?
She was going to get a loan or purchased furniture. I don't know. And she slid cash across the table. And I was like, you need to get out of my darn office. Heck no. So I think to this day, I think she was a test from the fingerprinting people to see if like my moral compass and my ethics were up to par.
Well, when I talked to I have a good friend of mine, it's a car dealer, and here in Mobile, there's an Amazon distribution center, and he said they're running into a lot of people saying that they work at Amazon because what are they going to do? Call Amazon to verify?
Right.
Or work at Google. What are you going to do? Call Google? You know, things like that.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, because half of these online places don't even have a number to call to get in touch with anybody about anything, right?
Mm-mm.
That is crazy. Huh. Well, if I ever go to jail, that'll be what I use for my parole guy. I'll just tell him I'm working at Google. Check it if you want to.
I've met 5 people in my life that have said they worked at Google, and only one of those was legitimate.
The other 4,
it's the easiest lie in the world.
The other 4 just lied, or were they kidding?
No, it was not a kidding situation.
Wow. Wow. Well, Cadie with a C, I really, 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 really appreciate you being on the show today.
It's been fun. Thank you.
Networking, guys, networking is extremely important. If you don't think accounting, bookkeeping, and payroll is important, just get it screwed up sometime, and you will probably not sleep for about 3 days until you get it figured out. And hopefully, it's not bad enough where it shuts your business down.
And guys, do us a favor. Go to the Apple iTunes app, or go to Spotify, or go to Overcast, or YouTube, or wherever you listen to our podcast at, and subscribe to Cheers to Business. If you like this format, this is the deep fried sort of format. It's going to be very similar. So they basically drink wine and talk about business.
That's it.
Yeah. So,
I'm going to subscribe as soon as we hang up.
I would subscribe to that. Do us a favor, please. We don't ask for any money. We don't take sponsors' money. All the way you pay us is that you, number one, subscribe to our podcast, reach out to us, tell us how awesome we are or how terrible we are, and then also the third thing is subscribe to our fellow cohorts podcasts.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And the fourth thing is, if you ever want to get fired and or go to jail, just steal the premium money out of your escrow account or your your account that you keep your premium in, sweep account, and you will very quickly or maybe not quickly. I had not a friend, but an acquaintance of mine that has been shut down, and he was having all his insured's policy documents sent to his agency, and then just taking the premium and putting it in his personal bank account. And then after about the 3rd claim got filed,
this was a friend.
This is an independent acquaintance, not a friend, but an acquaintance. And after about the 3rd claim got filed, and people were like, well, I've been paying my insurance. And they, well, sorry, you don't have insurance coverage.
We've seen that on payroll deductions.
Yeah.
So withholding the insurance or garnishments or whatever, and then the payment's not being submitted. So that's why we handle it so that a person in the office isn't responsible for that.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Guys, thank you all for listening today. As I always say, get your ass out from behind that desk and go out into the big bad world and sling business cards. Network, go see people. If people don't know you, I can promise you they will not do business with you. So go write good business for the agencies that you represent. Go write good business for the companies that you represent. Bradley Flowers, I love you.
Love you too, buddy.
Hey, y'all have a great week. You are listening to the Insurance Guys podcast. See you soon.
Thanks, Cadie.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Insurance Guys podcast. If you need to know more about me or you need to get in touch with Scott, you can always reach me at theinsuranceguyonline.com or email me at iprotectins@gmail.com. And if you need to get in touch with Mr. Bradley Flowers, go to bradleyflowersinsurance.com or email him at bradley@saralandinsurance.com. Guys, we love you. Thank you so much for listening. We look forward to being with you again real soon on the next episode of The Insurance Guys. Take care.